that stretches from Arizona all the way to New York State. This is a huge stretch of more than 30 states, but the ice is one to watch. With crippling ice accreting more than a half an inch, we're going to have power outages. And unfortunately, we have cold air behind this storm, so we're looking at a prolonged amount of time where you could be without power.
The alleged ringleader of the mob that attacked a Minnesota church has been arrested, and the DOJ says a second person has also been arrested. The first arrest was a person named Nakima Levy Armstrong, a known Black Lives Matter agitator. Fox News legal analyst Carrie Urban says these people are about to learn a hard lesson.
DOJ is not messing around here. I have to say, it takes some guts to do what they're doing, and I personally think they're doing the right thing based on my observation, just me watching the video and knowing the federal statutes that are potentially at play. You can't interfere in a person's constitutional right, and this is a fundamental right of freedom, right? Religious freedom. We know this.
President Trump announced that the U.S. and NATO have agreed on a framework of a future deal for U.S. access to Greenland. Lucas Tomlinson has more from Greenland.
Here in Greenland, President Trump says it's critical to deploy the Golden Dome missile defense system to plug those gaps in America's defense system here in Greenland.
If the bad guys start shooting, it comes over Greenland. So we knock it down. It's pretty infallible. It's amazing. You know, Ronald Reagan had the idea a long time ago, but we didn't have any technology at that point.
Russia still has over 1,700 nuclear warheads deployed. China, 600. Right now, the U.S. military has only 44 interceptor missiles at Fort Greely in Alaska and just 4 in Vandenberg Space Force Base in Santa Barbara, California.
Former Special Counsel Jack Smith facing questions from a House Judiciary Committee about his prosecution of President Trump on charges of conspiring to overturn the 2020 election and withholding thousands of classified government documents. House Judiciary Committee Chair Jim Jordan criticizing the former special counsel for issuing subpoenas for phone data and records of the president's allies, some being members of Congress.
Even the Democrats said this was wrong. But of course, we shouldn't be surprised. Democrats have been going after President Trump for 10 years.
Brandeis University is planning to host an ICE surveillance activist during an upcoming so-called Immigration Justice Week.
Brandeis University in Massachusetts is preparing to host its Immigration Justice Week from February 2nd through the 6th. Zachary Marshall of Campus Reform explained Jonathan Paz is scheduled to speak there.
Who is a U.S. congressional candidate and is an anti-ICE activist working to pretty much help people obstruct ICE proceedings and investigations.
Marshall explained Paz has also done things to help people report ICE through a hotline when agents are out trying to find illegal aliens.
And I think this issue in this event is not a matter of free speech. It's a matter of political honesty, which I think the left is severely lacking when it comes to the immigration debate.
Marshall said that higher education, whether that be student activists, leftist professors, or any of their allies, they paint the illegal immigration debate with a very broad brush.
If you only listen to them, you would only think that ICE is going after illegal immigrants who have not committed any crimes apart from coming here illegally, when the truth is that ICE is targeting, and has been since January, the most violent offenders. These include rapists, murderers, and other people who have committed violent crimes against American citizens, primarily women.
Marshall said he thinks it's irresponsible for higher education leaders and activists to distort the truth among, quote, gullible and unsuspecting Americans who aren't as read up on these issues.
What we are trying to do at Campus Reform is hold these activists accountable.
I'm Bronson Woodruff.
More news online at afn.net and on the AFN mobile app. I'm Rusty Pugh.
Hello, my name is Andy Miller, and I'm the president of Wesley Biblical Seminary based in Ridgeland, Mississippi. We are developing trusted leaders for faithful churches, and we do that based in the authority of Scripture and in the reality that Christians can be transformed. We do that also through bachelor's, master's, and doctoral degrees. We'd love for you to learn more about Wesley Biblical Seminary at wbs.edu, where we're developing trusted leaders for faithful churches.
We inform.
Religious freedom is about people of faith being able to live out their faith, live out their convictions, no matter where they are.
We equip.
Sacred honor is the courage to speak truth, to live out your free speech.
We also rejoice in our sufferings because we know that suffering produces perseverance, perseverance, character, and character, hope.
This is At the Core on American Family Radio.
Welcome to At the Core with Walker Wildmon and Rick Green. I'm Rick Green, America's Constitution Coach. Thanks for joining us today. Going to just jump right into the headlines. Of course, a lot going on because, anytime Trump gets on Air Force One, or I guess had to end up on Air Force Two or whatever, but things are going to happen. There's going to be some headlines I did not expect to find out that looks like we're going to get this. Let me make sure I'm reading this right. Unlimited total access to Greenland without payment. So I went to bed last night thinking, what did I read? 700 billion or some crazy number, and all of this other stuff. And I was just, I don't know, I was debating with myself. I was like, okay, everybody thought the Louisiana Purchase was too much, and yet, obviously turned out to be a good move. And I'm just going Alaska. I'm thinking about all these times in history, and I'm thinking, okay, I get it. I get all the national security advantages. I finally now understand a little bit more about that, and why this is a must for us. This is not even optional for us at this point. But so I'm just trying to think. Okay, probably is worth whatever price tag Trump comes up with. He's doing the calculations, and then I wake up to this headline: U.S. to gain total access to Greenland without payment. Under the agreement, the United States would gain access to the Arctic island for an unlimited period of time and at no cost. Let me just keep going. This is Epic Times, I think I said. Anyway, President Donald Trump said on January 22nd, the United States is negotiating an arrangement to secure full access to Greenland with no payment in return, and unconstrained by any time limit, with the president previously describing U.S. control of the Arctic island as essential to both national and international security. The last part I think everybody's starting to buy into. They're starting to understand why this is essential and why we need total access. But I just didn't expect. So anyway, he says, quote, "There's no end. There's no time limit," Trump said. "We're not doing a 99-year or a 10-year deal or anything else." Trump says the deal could provide broad U.S. military access to Greenland, and reiterated his plans for the construction of a Golden Dome missile defense shield for them. So I mean, I'm assuming, he's doing all these deals while he's there with all the other, international or national leaders from across the world. But I know we joke about it. We're always joking about the art of the deal. He's the best negotiator on the planet. Look at all these peace deals he's negotiated. What is it, like 7 wars ended in just the first year of this second term? But this is ridiculous. I mean, like, ridiculously good is what I mean. So anyway, we'll see. Is it Trump bloviating? I don't know. He is truly the master negotiator. I've always said Zig Ziglar was by far the master on stage, like the best speaker on stage the world has ever known, in my opinion, and just truly the master. I mean, God gifted Zig in a very, very special ways. I was blessed to be mentored by him. Loved that man. He had such an impact, still having an impact. I mean, his recordings and his teachings and everything, just incredible. If you've never listened to him, go look him up. Go get some of his stuff over at Ziglar.com. Go to PatriotAcademy.com and get the the Raising Positive Kids in a Negative World. We actually re-released that with an intro from my wife and I because we used it with our kids, and it's gold. It's just gold. Anyway, he was the best ever at moving a crowd, at motivating you, at sharing the gospel just incredible. I've never given a title of the best ever on anything else, I don't think, other than Zig as the best speaker. I think if this deal goes through for sure, but honestly, he's already earned it. I mean, this would just be another feather in his cap. You have to say that Donald Trump is the best negotiator in the history of mankind. I mean, if he had been there instead of Abraham, he probably would have figured out a way to save Sodom and Gomorrah, hopefully turn it around. But Abraham tried. He negotiated the best he could. But I'm telling you, Donald Trump is the best negotiator in the history of negotiations, and the best troller. While we're racking up the accolades, he's not yet the best president, but the dude's got 4 or 3 more years, and he may end up knocking off my top 3. I mentioned the other day that I still had Reagan at 4. That was wrong. I had to bump Reagan to number 5 because Trump moved in front of Reagan to number 4. and he's really close to bumping off Coolidge, man. Coolidge is my number 3, Calvin Coolidge, and then of course Lincoln at number 2, and George Washington at number 1. To knock off Lincoln and Washington, I'm just dreaming a little bit here, folks. Okay, just hang with me for a second here. My mind goes to these places. Okay, I know I've got a bunch of other headlines to get to, but I'm just thinking, like, what would have to happen? What would have to happen in the next 3 years for me to rank Donald Trump as the best president in the history of America? And I know there's some out there that already think that. I can't. Look, Washington is the indispensable man. There's no America without George Washington. But arguably, that's prior to being president. That's the general. That's the Constitutional Convention. Being president there and shepherding that thing through. Those things, certainly in the war, indispensable man. No victory over the British without George Washington. No rallying of the troops and the comeback after the crossing of the Delaware and all that stuff. I mean, no doubt. But that's before he's president. So can't count that, right? So you got to, if we're just saying best president, like who had the best, the most positive impact on the job of the president, which is to defend the Constitution and to execute the laws. I mean, that's it, right? That's the summary of what the president is supposed to be. Commander-in-chief, defend the nation, but that's included in defending the Constitution. So that's why Coolidge is ranked so high, because he was so good at constitutional limitations and jurisdictions. And okay, so I'm thinking out loud here. I'm thinking if President Trump, so if he could, let's just make a checklist. We're just going to do this in real time. I haven't thought about this, folks. So if you can't tell, I do the show impromptu every Tuesday and Thursday. I don't do any prep. I don't know if you can tell. Maybe if you can, that's bad. But I just like reacting to the headlines and just taking your calls and having fun together. Okay, it's not because I'm lazy. I got 14 other jobs that I do every day, and there's just no way. Anyway, all that to say, I'm making this up as I go, but I'm having fun doing it. And so let's make this up as we go here. Let's see. Okay, so. If we're going to, and again, my top 5, George Washington's number 1, Abraham Lincoln's number 2, Calvin Coolidge's number 3, Donald Trump's number 4, Ronald Reagan's number 5. That's my top 5 presidents of all time. So if Trump's going to edge out Coolidge, what does he got to do? Like what has to happen in the next 3 years? And then if he's going to topple Abraham Lincoln, do we have to have a civil war? No, but I mean, we're kind of in one in a way. So I'm actually thinking there might be some things he could pull off that would allow him to pull ahead of Abraham Lincoln. Okay, and then George Washington. What would he have to do to top George Washington? And I'm actually in real time right now as I'm talking through this, I'm starting to doubt my ranking. I'm starting to think I put Washington at number 1 for too many things that were prior to the presidency. So if we're going to rank them based on their actual time as president, not just their impact on the nation. In other words, if we had a different list for greatest Americans of all time, greatest impact on the country overall of all time, different measurement. We can count everything George Washington did, and definitely he's number 1. But for president, all right, so top 5 presidents. I'm thinking, if Donald Trump actually pulls off the deportation of, let's say, 10 million. Let's say he gets it up to 10. I mean, he could get it up to 20 if he does what I was talking about the other day, where he, really teams up with a couple of these red states. Their legislatures come in and pass some legislation calling forth for the Article 4, Section 4. If all of that happens and they pull off even 10 million. So supposedly, if I heard that headline right, Tuesday, we're over 2 million already. I think they said 2.5. So if he could do that in year 1, could he do that in all of the next 3 and hit 10 million? Could he ramp it up? Could he get to a point where these red states truly come alongside him and law enforcement teams up with him, and he focuses there while still having to fight law enforcement and local law enforcement, and it's really not local law enforcement, it's local law enforcement leaders, some of these chiefs of police that have been hired by these radical leftist mayors and city councils like in Minneapolis. But if he could pull that off, I think that alone could pull him ahead of possibly possibly all three that I've got in the top three slots, but definitely in front of Coolidge. Okay, and then I would say a couple other things to look for as we'll just keep having this discussion for the next 3 years. Okay, if over the next 3 years he continues to do executive orders that are constitutional, and he does not fall into the the unconstitutional executive orders, then that could definitely surpass. He'll pass Coolidge. I mean, he's so close in my mind right now that he could pass him in the next few months with just a few more constitutional actions and getting rid of some of the unconstitutional actions that the federal government is doing. So just think about the fact that he's doing the whole, he's not yet wiped out the Department of Education, but the redirection of the Department of Education and working towards getting rid of the Department of Education. So that's a big constitutional restoration. So if he gets rid of things that we never authorized in the first place, those are big steps. And he's not neutered, but he has certainly weakened several of these agencies as they should be. And he's essentially completely radically changed the direction of federal health policy in these agencies through RFK. Obviously, RFK is the change agent there, but Trump is fully supporting him on all of this, as far as we know. And so I would obviously, I've talked about it on the air all the time, FDA, CDC, these are all NIH, all unconstitutional. None of that should exist. That should only be an agency that could be created by the states, unless we do a constitutional amendment. So if the states want to, they've all got their own state Department of Health, state, disease control, all that stuff. If they want to come together and pool their resources and have some sort of a arrangement where they work together and have some entity that helps monitor across state lines, and they opt into that, that would be constitutional. That would be allowed. But the federal CDC and FDA and NIH and the rest are not constitutional. There's nothing in the Constitution authorizing federal government to have anything to do with health care. So Trump has not wiped those out by any stretch of the imagination, but he's at least radically changed their direction. And so I don't know which ones would have to be wiped out for me to push him past Coolidge, but it wouldn't take much at this point based on what he's done. Now, to pass Lincoln, he's going to have to win the culture war. He's going to have to actually continue what he's doing in Minneapolis, do that in Chicago and Seattle and everywhere else, actually deport these illegals from across the nation, which is at the heart of the civil war that's happening right now. Radically transform education so that we're pro-America in our education system, which is part of the civil war in our country right now. So it's basically between pro-America forces and anti-American forces from within and from without. And so if he wins that over the next 3 years through the education reforms, through a lot of these other things he's working on, man, I think he could pass Lincoln. And then, you heard it in my voice already in this segment, he may end up passing Washington just by sheer force, and my reevaluation of Washington's biggest steps being prior to being president. So, all right, I went way too far on that. I'm really intrigued by this discussion. I know it's narcissistic for the president to think about his legacy, but it's not so. For us to think about it is to just be good stewards of what we've been given, so we know how to vote in the future, and to be good judges of our leaders. That's the kind of judgment we are supposed to do. That is not a judge not lest you be judged. That's literally using discernment and measuring the people that we chose to lead our country. All right, we may dive a little bit more into that, but there's some other headlines that we got to get to dealing with some of the other issues across the country. So stay with me. Phone number is 888-589-8840, 888-589-8840. You're listening to At the Core with Walker Wildmon and Rick Green.
There were added that day about 3,000 souls. My name is Abraham Hamilton III, and this is the Hamilton Minute. The day of Pentecost concluded with 3,000 converts being added to the initial body of 120 believers. Then that 3,120 spent time together daily, going to the temple and interacting in each other's homes. They devoted themselves continually to the apostles' teaching, fellowship, sharing meals together, and praying together. The 3,120 that made up the early church came from Turkey, the Middle East, and Africa, and included Arabs and Romans. In addition to the geographic and ethnic diversity, they also spoke different languages. Yet they were made one family in Christ Jesus. Scripture has the answer to the issues we face today.
Listen each weekday from 5 to 6 p.m. Central for the Hamilton Corner with Abraham Hamilton III, Public Policy Analyst for the American Family Association.
Director of the AFA Foundation, Riley Wildmon.
I've traveled a lot. I've met with people from all over the country.
Riley has served as the director of the AFA Foundation for over a decade.
The most rewarding thing about my job is that we get to build relationships through our donors and our supporters and get to have that personal relationship with them.
Contact the AFA Foundation today to learn how you can shore up permanent income for your retirement years while supporting the culture-transforming work of the American Family Association. A charitable gift annuity benefits you and helps ensure the AFA will impact America for generations to come. Call 800-326-4543, extension 345. That's 800-326-4543, extension 345. The AFA Foundation, the financial stewardship division of the American Family Association.
Hello, everyone. I'm Tim Wildmon, president of American Family Association and American Family Radio. Hey, we've decided to make our Spiritual Heritage Tour this year a walking tour. So we're going to walk in Washington, D.C., and we're going to walk down to Williamsburg and then walk over to Jamestown. So we're going to do a lot of walking on this tour. So if that's something you're interested in, understand that I'm just kidding. I'm just pulling your leg. Hey, we're going to see Washington, D.C. We're going to see Mount Vernon. We're going to see Williamsburg, Jamestown, Yorktown, Boston, Mass. So much to see on our 3 different tours in 2026. If you want to go and not walk, but you want to get on a bus, join us for these tours. Any one of these tours you can find out information on just by going to wildmongroup.com. WILDMON group.com. All the information on all the tours for 2026 are there, and we hope to see you on one.
This is At the Core on American Family Radio with your host, Rick Green.
Welcome back to At the Core with Walker Wildmon and Rick Green. I'm Rick Green, America's Constitution coach. Thank you so much for staying with me today. All right, before I get into the couple of these other headlines, by the way, I love one of these headlines. Speaker Johnson talking about impeaching these out-of-control judges. Boy, I've been advocating for this for a long time, so we're going to have some fun with that one. But first, let me tell you about preborn. This is a great, great opportunity. I mentioned it Tuesday. This is our week to do this. We want to save a lot of babies, and we know this works. We have quantifiable data, real results, actual babies alive today because of what I'm about to tell you about. This is one of those times, one of those few times where you don't have to guess whether or not your donation's making a difference, whether or not your prayers are making a difference, whether or not this organization's actually delivering on what they're saying. Preborn and American Family Radio have teamed up on this for years. We love what they do, and I just want to encourage you to give as much as you can. If you can only give a little, that's fine, but this is one of those few times I ask you to donate to something. I don't do that very often. It's got to be something I really believe in, that I personally give to, and that I know will make a difference. So they've been doing this since 2007. And what they do is they get these sonogram machines, they get them in the hands of these local pregnancy centers so that they can get the mom that's considering an abortion to just take a look. If they'll do that, if they'll take a look and realize having that ultrasound, all of a sudden you hear that heartbeat, you see that picture, how far along they are. I'm telling you, you see it, you cannot deny its life. It's like, oh my goodness, conviction right then, and joy. I mean, at that point, it's a big, big change. And so you have this tremendous response that happens, and the percentage of moms that then turn around and save their baby and choose not to have an abortion is huge. This is the number one way to do it, folks. I mean, there's a lot of things we do to save babies and save lives, and in the pro-life movement, I've been involved for 35 years. I mean, there's a lot of good things that happen. This is the game changer one. This one works. So the numbers are pretty outstanding. 400,000 babies have been saved as a result of this. 100,000 women have surrendered to the Lord. I mean, think about that. You got 100,000 ladies that were going in for an abortion to end the life of their baby, and they end up giving their life to Christ because of the ministry of preborn. So this is huge. And last year, I mean, talk about ramping this thing up, and thank you to all of our AFR listeners because you were a huge part of this. Last year alone, 80,000 women chose life. 80,090 women chose life, and over 10,000 women made a commitment to Christ just last year. So you remember us talking about this time last year. Think about that. If you donated last year as a result of listening to one of our programs and hearing what I'm talking about right now, you were a part of that. You helped make that happen. 80,090 women last year that chose life. So that's a lot of babies, and then 10,000 that gave their life to Christ. So really, really successful ministry. Preborn ministry, here's what you can do. Okay, you give $28. That's going to pay for one ultrasound. $28. Just think about that. That's not much. What is that? 4 lattes, depending on what you're ordering. Maybe only 2 if you get. Anyway, point is $28. Most all of us, if you're in the sound of my voice, you can do at least that much. Okay, that's one ultrasound, gives a mom the opportunity to choose life. What a lot of people are doing is basically a fifer. Okay, so you get $140, pays for 5 free ultrasounds. So that's 5 women that we're going to be able to reach and potentially save the baby, potentially lead them to the Lord. And the results speak for themselves. All right, so $28 if you want to do one, $140 if you want to do 5. And then there's a handful of you out there that can do this. I realize everybody can't do this. I can't do this, but some of you can. $15,000 actually puts another ultrasound machine in the field. So it might be a pregnancy center that doesn't have one yet, and so now we're able to bring these incredible results to that pregnancy center. Maybe there's wearing out and they need a new one, whatever. $15,000 puts another ultrasound machine into the field to save these lives for years to come. So here's how you can do it. 877-616-2396, 877-616-2396. Just call, tell them you want to be a part of the preborn campaign that's happening right now, and you want to donate $28 if that's what your choice is to be able to provide one ultrasound, $140 to provide 5, $15,000 if you want to do the machine, or frankly any amount that works for you that the Lord puts on your heart. You can also go to the website afr.net, and then, of course, follow through right there for preborn. So great opportunity. God bless you, every single one of you. I know a lot of you have already given. The week's been fantastic, already getting tremendous results, and we look forward to deploying that into the field. All right, phone number directly, so if you want to call in, comments, questions, insults, whatever you got, is 888-589-8840. That's 888-589-8840. You can pick any of these topics that I'm about to rattle through as quick as possible, some of these headlines that are happening. We have, what's a nice way to say this? We have become very frustrated with the lack of subpoenas, lack of indictments, and lack of arrests, and, of course, lack of convictions of those who had a reign of terror over the United States over the last 4 years before Donald Trump was sworn in. Definitely want to see results in that area. Well, the new one is, of course, this church being stormed in Minneapolis, literally accosting the pastor and, violating private property. We talked about all of it on Tuesday. It's not freedom of speech. You do not get to take someone else's platform or force your way onto someone else's platform. That is not free speech. That's the Marxist tactic of silencing, intimidating. Don Lemon even said that's the whole purpose, was to make people uncomfortable, to intimidate them. And that is not constitutional. That is not the American way. You build up your platform, and free speech prevents the government from coming in and tearing it down and preventing you from speaking on your platform or to a platform you've been invited to. But it does not guarantee you the platform. All right, so you had this big crowd, these agitators, these ICE rioters, whatever you want to call them, that did this to this church. Everybody's seen it. It's all over social media. Well, apparently they have already arrested some suspects. So this is actually pretty quick. All right, it's Thursday, but still, this could have gone on for a long time. Let's not forget in BLM, Antifa, their riots all across the nation, burning buildings down, all of that. In most of those cases, no arrest. Nobody ever got arrested, and the ones that did were immediately let out on bail, and very few were actually taken to trial and convicted. Compare that to the J6 defendants. So now you've got a new DOJ. This was, I said it on Tuesday, that, here's one of those opportunities for Pam Bondi to shine, to basically, rehabilitate her image and the reputation that she's got right now with most of the country, and certainly with the people that are in the MAGA crowd. So they have arrested, apparently, let's see how many we got. So they're going to be charged with felonies. Trump administration announced that federal agents had arrested several, so maybe they didn't give us an exact number. First suspect was Nakima Levy Armstrong, apprehended during a morning operation by FBI, charged with a felony for alleged conspiracy to violate someone's constitutional legal rights, carries a maximum of 10 years, and looks like Pam Bondi said, listen loud and clear, we do not tolerate attacks on places of worship. So I don't know how many. I can't find a number for how many they arrested, and I do not see Don Lemon's number or name in here. So that's the one you got to get. I mean, he led the charge into the church. He's the one that disturbed them the most. You can't let him off the hook. Now maybe they're just trying to make sure it's solid because he's clearly going to have the funds to back him, and the media is going to make him a darling. And maybe they're just calculating we don't want to make him a star for the left, which is what'll happen if he's charged. He's going to be the spokesman for the left, and maybe they're just essentially robbing him of that. Could be. I haven't talked to anybody about that. Again, this is off the cuff here. But that's the first thing that came to my mind when I realized they had not indicted him yet. So the other thing on this front, there have been subpoenas issued to some of these guys like Tim Walz and Jacob Fay and some of these other folks, and I think they are going beyond the fraud and everything. I think it's also going to be going into a lot of the tactics that are being used to stop ICE and the encouragement of these people to do those things. So apparently they've already gotten 10,000 illegal immigrants out of Minneapolis. That's what Kristi Noem said last week. And so that's pretty significant. I mean, for one city, and with the resistance that they've had, the weather, I mean, all those things, I'd say that's a win-win big time, and they're continuing, of course. But these investigations, and the House is also investigating. The House of Representatives is investigating, certainly on the fraud issues out of Minnesota. So Minnesota's a mess, no doubt about it. But I'm going to say to our listeners in Minnesota, hey, we have not abandoned you. And we know that there are a ton of Bible-believing, Constitution-defending and loving, America-loving patriots in Minnesota. I speak up there all the time. Have done I don't know how many times over the last 30 years I've spoken to Minnesota, but it's a lot. And was just out in some of the smaller towns in Minnesota, and there's wonderful people in Minnesota. And like most states, it's the blue cities, man. It's the blue cities that make a state look really bad and end up electing really bad governors like Tim Walz. But there's still a lot of patriots in Minnesota. Same for Washington. Seattle doesn't represent all of Washington. Unfortunately, it's the population, so it ends up representing Washington in the legislature and the governor and all of that. But it's similar all across the country. Even in some of your red states like Idaho, Boise's a real problem. But my point is, Minnesota, we're not done with you. We are not giving up on you. And I think you should be thankful for President Trump, for Kristi Noem, for Tom Homan, for all that is happening right now to try and save your city, your state and your biggest cities. So Minneapolis and St. Paul is not being abandoned. We're, in fact, doing everything we can to help. All right, let's move to a couple of the other subjects. We've got I already mentioned the Greenland thing. We can move on to the House Speaker. I mentioned this at break. So, everybody's kind of, I think you've paid attention to this. I know if you're a listener at AFR, you have. But the judges have been trying to do everything they can to stop the Trump agenda. So let's back up and try to take the personalities out of this for a second, and let's just talk, how should a constitutional republic work? Like, where are the checks and balances? We separate the power on purpose. Montesquieu's Spirit of the Laws, of course, teaches that, but we know biblically, Jeremiah 17:9, the heart is evil, no man can know it. And so John Adams and others quoted that Bible verse to say you gotta spread the power out. You got to have checks and balances. You don't want anybody to have too much power. So we did that. We got a phenomenal design. It is really I think Justice Scalia was right. It is the secret to what made America so great. Now, I think that secret is just part of the biblical overall formula, but the secret that he's referring to is the fact that we have these checks and balances, that nobody gets unlimited power. The president doesn't, Congress doesn't, the courts don't, the states don't, local government doesn't. It's spread out, okay? And we tried to draw lines around that and give the right powers to the right entities that we thought would work best. This is a fundamental line that we'll be repeating a lot this year during the 250th birthday of the Declaration. And that line in the Declaration says when any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish and institute new governments, laying its foundation on such principles. And here's the line: and organizing its powers in such forms as shall seem to them the most likely to affect their safety and happiness. So what does that mean? That means how you organize the powers is all about who gets to decide. Who, does the federal government decide when we go to war, or the state governments? Okay, obviously the federal government. And if it's the federal government that decides when we go to war, who in the federal government? So now we split up between fed, states, and local, but then we split within local, and we split within the state, and we split within the feds. And so in our design, we split within the feds between three branches of government initially in the in the Constitution, and the Constitution only authorizes those three branches of government: the judiciary, the president, and the executive. Unfortunately, we created a fourth branch, and I've called it that my whole career, which is the bureaucracy, the deep state, all of these bureaucrats, all of these agencies that don't answer to anybody but run our lives, and they have more of the power than even the public servants that are elected have. So the Constitution splits up those powers between the president, the executive, and president, the legislative, and the judiciary. Now, the founders, without going too far into the weeds because we've got to take a break, but the founders said very clearly in the Federalist Papers, in the way that they laid out the Constitution, that the judiciary is to be the weakest of the three branches, and that we would never have to worry about losing our liberty because it doesn't have any real power. It doesn't have the purse, and it doesn't have the sword. And so that's supposed to be the design of our nation, and that should not change unless we do a constitutional amendment to say we want the courts to have more power. We have not done that. All right, so the courts are the weakest. Now let's come over here to the Congress. Is it supposed to be the most powerful, or the president? Congress is supposed to be the most powerful. In fact, they're very clear about that in the Federalist Papers. Legislature necessarily predominates is one of the quotes. Why? Because it's closest to the people. We can get to our congressman and have a conversation. We can call right. We can influence that election more than we can the U.S. Senator or the president. Okay, so that's you already figured out then who would be in the middle, the president. So the Congress is the most powerful, the president is in the middle, and then the courts are the weakest. So now we have to ask ourselves, if the president is elected by the American people on an agenda that is very clear, everybody knows that the number one focus of this new president, if you vote for him, is going to be to do a certain thing. And that certain thing is constitutional, and it's actually just following the law that's already on the books. And then he gets elected by a landslide, wins big, or she, and then starts doing that thing, whatever it is. Should one out of 1,000 federal judges out there at the lowest level of the federal judiciary be able to say, no, I don't think you should do that agenda. I think there's something in that agenda that's unconstitutional, or whatever excuse they come up with. Should one federal judge at the lowest level of the judicial branch, which is the lowest branch of the three branches of the federal government, should that one low-level federal judge be able to override the president, who is the executive by himself, so he's at the highest level of the branch that is in the middle? If you're following that, I need a whiteboard. So Congress most powerful, president second most powerful, judiciary is the weakest. The weakest of the weakest, one federal judge at the bottom saying you can't do this. The strongest of the middle branch, who is actually the one that's supposed to faithfully execute the laws, is trying to do this thing that they ran on and got elected on. Should that little, pipsqueak of a federal judge at the bottom be able to override the agenda? I think you know the answer. When we come back, we'll talk about what to do when they do override that agenda and violate their oath of office. Can that most powerful branch, the Congress, impeach them? Stay with me. I'm Rick Green, America's Constitution Coach. You're listening to At the Core with Walker Wildmon and Rick Green.
America is about to celebrate her 250th birthday. In the beginning of our country, almost all American children were raised with a Christian worldview.
that has drastically changed over the last 250 years. What's your opinion on what we can do to restore it? Your thoughts and your support will help us fight for our kids, and we'll give you the DVD Educated for Liberty with Stephen McDowell as our thanks. Visit afa.net/educate today. afa.net/educate.
Thoughts of the child you were carrying keep pouring over in your mind. A deep, unrelenting sadness overshadows your days, and you wonder if you will ever feel whole again. There is hope and healing from a reproductive loss. Call the International Helpline, 866-482-LIFE, and talk with someone who has been where you are. Your call is confidential, and we will help you find healing. 866-482-LIFE.
What if healthcare could be more than bills and bureaucracy? What if it could reflect faith, foster community, and offer spiritual support? At Redeem HealthShare Ministry, the mission goes beyond medical bills. It's about honoring Christ and embracing healthcare that aligns with Christian values. Redeem members share medical expenses through monthly contributions, supporting one another in a Christ-centered community. It's not insurance, it's believers helping believers through financial support and prayer. And Redeem HealthShare provides freedom for members to select the doctors, hospitals, and treatments that are right for them. No networks, no restrictions, just faith-driven care. From everyday checkups to unexpected medical emergencies, Redeem offers flexible programs and encouragement rooted in Scripture. Because your healthcare should reflect your faith, not compromise it. More at redeemhealthshare.org or call 1-844-REDEEM-0.
You know, if I could spend one afternoon with any person who lived during my lifetime, it would be with Sir Winston Churchill.
Here's today's Dr. Dobson Minute with Dr. James Dobson.
He had more failures than successes in his political career, but his persistence paid off. He eventually became Prime Minister of Britain. What I admire most about Winston Churchill is his dogged determination to persevere. His first speech as Prime Minister to the House of Commons on May 10, 1940, is legendary. He said, "I have nothing to offer but blood, toil, tears, and sweat. You ask what is our policy? I say it is to wage war by land, sea, and air. What is our aim? I can answer in one word: victory." In time, Churchill helped England and the other allies to achieve that victory. Perhaps Winston Churchill's legacy will encourage you in the midst of your battles today.
For more information, visit drdobsonminute.org.
Hi, this is Claudia from Virginia. I have been giving to preborn for years. The main reason that led me to them was that they gave the gospel to the clients. After that, it was simply a matter of their ability to do sonograms. This results in more women opting not to abort their child. Preborn supports the women and child afterwards, and they have a supportive system that just doesn't abandon their clients once they've made the decision. They're a caring, loving charity with which I am honored to be associated. Thank you.
This is At the Core on American Family Radio with your host, Rick Green.
Welcome back to At the Core with Walker Wildmon and Rick Green. I'm Rick Green, America's Constitution Coach. We are walking through what to do with these crazy, out-of-control, radical judges that think they are more powerful than the president. So 20-second review of segment 2. Who's the most which branch at the federal level is the most powerful? It's the Congress. And which branch is the weakest? It's the courts. And which branch is right in the middle? The president. And very clearly in the Federalist Papers, in the way that the government was designed, the way that it ran for the first 100 years, unfortunately, the court has elevated itself to become the most powerful and have the final say on every law in America. But typically, that's the Supreme Court that does that. What we've been seeing are these local judges, these local federal judges, being able to overturn a policy of the president and stop something from happening in the entire nation. I would argue that even the Supreme Court should not be able to do that. They do not have the power to be able to do that. So why would we allow the weakest of the branches to be able to overturn what the second most powerful branch is doing? It's insane. And nobody elects these judges either. So here's the question that is before the Congress at this point. And remember, we said in the last segment, checks and balances, checks and balances. What do you do if one of the branches violates the balance? What is the check? In other words, so if a judge oversteps their boundaries, or if the president oversteps his or her boundaries, okay, they're outside the balance. Balance simply meaning we gave some power to the courts, some power to the Congress, and some power to the president. If any of them go beyond their balance, what's the check to push them back into the balance, right? So that's the problem. The courts have gotten out of their balance, and no one has checked their power for the last, 100 years. I mean, what we used to do is if a judge did something that they weren't supposed to do that was beyond their power, we impeached them. So, I mean, you had a United States Supreme Court, one of the first appointees to the United States Supreme Court that had an impeachment because of overstepping their boundaries. So what we need to be doing is saying, okay, look, let me see if I can remember which one it is. It's either Federalist 51 or 81, but in the Federalist Papers, it's either Madison or Hamilton. Can't remember. Madison did 51 and Hamilton did 81, but I can't remember which one it's in. They use this line where they say that impeachment is a bridle in the hands of the legislature. Okay, get that word picture. Impeachment is a bridle in the hands of the legislature. What they're saying is, this is your check. This is how you rein in, literally, I'm using that word on purpose, you rein in an out-of-control branch. So it could be that Congress is impeaching a president for going outside of the balance. And so they're reining in the executive branch and specifically impeaching that president, which not only affects that president if they're convicted of the impeachment, but it affects the presidency because it basically gives you precedent for whatever that thing was that they did was out of balance. It was outside of their jurisdiction. Okay. Same thing with the courts. If a judge goes beyond their power, does something they weren't supposed to do under the Constitution, absolutely Congress should impeach them. The House does the impeaching, the Senate does the trial and the conviction or acquitting. So what's being discussed right now, and I think appropriately so, and frankly should have been discussed a lot sooner and should be done a lot more often, is that the House is considering impeaching some of these out-of-control judges, actually doing what the Founding Fathers said to do, reining in that branch, specifically reining in that judge, but it will help to rein in the entire branch and get it back in balance. It's a check. It is the check that brings the balance. And so this impeachment process is very important, only to be used when it should be used, but must be used when it should be used. Because if you don't use it, then that threat is gone. Then now it's just like saying, the cops aren't going to arrest you if you steal up to $900. Well, what are you doing? Well, you're telling all these thugs to go steal up to $900. And they're going to be just fine. So what do you get? You get a lot more theft and a lot more thugs. Okay, same thing if you have said in the Constitution, here's your power, third branch, here's your power, little Mr. District Federal Judge. Don't go beyond this power. If they go beyond that power, you got to slap their hand. You got to use the tool that you have. And for federal judges, impeachment is it. That's the only tool. Well, I take that back. You can defund. So Congress can also wipe out a federal judge's budget and just basically erase that court and get rid of the judge that way. That's absolutely okay. It's been done before, should be done more often. But the impeachment talk is what's happening right now. So here's what Speaker Johnson had to say, all right? He said extreme times call for extreme measures. Now, I disagree with the statement. I love Speaker Johnson. Don't get me wrong. I've known him for 15 years. 20 years. But I don't think it's just in extreme times that you do this. I think you do this when the judiciary gets out of control, which you could argue is extreme every time, but this is definitely extreme times. I don't disagree with his statement there. I'm just saying that's not the only time you should do this. This should be a regular practice so that they know, don't get out of line. Impeach a few. You don't even have to impeach that many. You impeach a few, the rest of them will stay in line. It's the old system of, you punish a few and it is a deterrent. So here's what it's actually a Texas congressman. It's Dinesh D'Souza's son-in-law, Brandon Gill, I think, is the one that is offering this. Let me see if I can find it here. Multiple Republicans have signaled they want to impeach two specific U.S. district judges that really went over the top. And Speaker Johnson said, I'm for it. Judge Boasberg is one who's been mentioned, and then there's also Judge Boardman. So let's see. I think this is Johnson. He says impeachment, as we have discussed altogether many, many times, is an extreme measure, but extreme times call for extreme measures. And I think some of these judges have gotten so far outside the bounds of where they're supposed to operate, it would not be, in my view, a bad thing for Congress to lay down the law, so to speak, and to make an example of some of these egregious abuses. That's the House Speaker without naming judges. Now, what I would say is, yes, that's exactly what you're doing, is laying down the law. You're enforcing the law. You're doing your job in Congress. You are called upon in the Constitution to do this. So the House absolutely should impeach, and the way this happens is all you need is 51% to impeach. So the House can impeach, and then the Senate has to have a trial, and then you got to have 2/3 that actually convict. And so if they convict, then it's up to them whether or not they ban that person from being able to hold public office in the future. They definitely remove them from office and can potentially ban them. So yeah, it's Brandon Gill, Republican in Texas. I think he's a freshman, if I remember right. He's either first time or second term. Very sharp guy. Of course, I love Dinesh D'Souza, but this is his son-in-law that is in Congress now. Anyway, so this could be huge. Now, my Congressman Chip Roy, who I also love, phenomenal congressman, does a great job. He impeached or introduced an impeachment resolution months ago, October, for Justice Boardman. It says for a sentencing decision that she made for a man accused of plotting to kill Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh. So that man, Nicholas Roski, was sentenced to 8 years in prison, while prosecutors had sought upwards of 30 years of imprisonment. The text of the resolution states that Boardman should be impeached for handing down an indefensibly light sentence to Roski, who prosecutors had said had traveled to Kavanaugh's home in June 2022 with a plan to kill the justice before he called the authorities on himself. So, I mean, yeah, this is, that's egregious. 8 years for a guy that was going to kill a Supreme Court justice? Crazy. But the point is, the process, the check that puts things back in balance is impeachment. Now, some of you may be saying, yeah, but Rick, didn't they abuse that with President Trump? I mean, they impeached him twice, which he's proud of because that means he's been impeached more than anyone else, and he likes to be number one. But yes, absolutely, they abused it. Absolutely, no question about it. The process did play out. No conviction in the Senate, so he was impeached, meaning just it's like an indictment. It's sort of like you get a grand jury to indict you. Typically, they do that with no evidence from you. So you don't even get to defend yourself with a grand jury. You don't go in and make your case and respond to all the stuff the prosecutor's saying. Grand jury is going to indict you based on worst case scenario of everything the prosecutor says. They're basically saying if everything the prosecutor says is true, if there's no defense for any of this guy or gal is going to get convicted. So yeah, let's indict him. If everything's true, then this guy should go to trial. And then when you get to trial, that's where you get to give your defense. And so that's kind of what the Senate does. So the House impeaches, or in essence indicts, and that's why you only got to have a majority. So the Republicans could do it without any Democrat votes. You couldn't have many Republicans defect, or it wouldn't happen. And then it goes over to the Senate for a full-blown trial. And so then in that trial, you've got to get the 2/3. So now you're gonna have to have some Democrat votes that say yes to the impeachment of one of these judges, or to the conviction of one of these judges. Okay, so now all of that kind of helps explain how it works, why it should work, and then you got to figure out the politics of it and the likelihood of it. I would argue that if they will at least impeach one or two of these judges, the impact would be huge. It would be significant. It would show the proper use of impeachment instead of, it just being a political tool, which is what the Democrats did with Trump. They didn't have an impeachable offense for him. So there wasn't anything he did that rose the level of impeachment, but they just wanted to cripple him if they could, which they didn't, and they wanted to, use the politics of it to damage him for any future run. And instead, it actually set him up to have this incredible 4-year run that he's in the middle of right now. So anyway, let's hope that happens. Speaker Johnson, please push this impeachment through. Okay, I'm so sorry I did not get to the phones at all Tuesday, and now I've only got 4 or 5 minutes left, and we'll try to get to some. 888-589-8840. 888-589-8840. Let's go with Oklahoma first. Sherry's up in Oklahoma. Sherry, go ahead.
Oh, thank you, Rick. President Trump has done so many good things, but I am concerned about, my understanding is the budget has to be complete next week, And if it isn't, I'm assuming there's a threat of another shutdown. I think our senators need to do away with the filibuster. Otherwise, I don't see how they're going to get any of Trump's agenda passed if they keep using that as an excuse.
Yeah, let me make sure I'm understanding what you're saying, because I honestly have not followed this. So you're saying that get rid of the filibuster so that they can get the budget through. Am I understanding you right?
Absolutely, yes. They don't have to have 60 votes.
Well, and isn't that crazy that you have? Isn't that crazy that you have a majority of, what do we have, 54 or whatever it is, and you have to get 6 Democrats or 5 Democrats, whatever it is, to get something done? I mean, why should you have to have a supermajority instead of a majority to do the basic business of the Senate?
I disagree with it totally. I hope everyone listening will call John Thune and call their senator and just pray and do everything we can to convince them we need to do away with the filibuster so we can do what we elected to do.
Yeah, exactly. Sherry, thank you. Great call. And I would say this applies to a lot more than just the budget. This is the appointees that the Senate has held up and is waiting forever to get done. It's some of the basic laws that need to be done, the codification of so many of the things that Trump did with executive orders that we could get through the House, some of which did get through the House, but we can't get through the Senate because of the filibuster. And let's be clear, the filibuster, as it's being used by the Senate today, is not the beloved filibuster of Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, okay? This is not the Jimmy Stewart movie where he, talks till he passes out. All right? That kind of filibuster, I'm all for. All right? We do that in Texas in our state Senate, and you got to just talk as long as you can. And everybody knows when you do it, you're not going to stop the agenda, most likely. You're going to bring attention to some of the things in the agenda or the bill or whatever it is that you think people may not be aware of, and that if you bring attention to that, then maybe you get enough phone calls to other senators or whatever and build up enough to stop it. Or you're just doing it to grandstand, for good reasons maybe, to just, again, raise awareness to some of the things that are about to happen if this bill passes. Now, obviously, there's guys like Cory Booker and others that do it to just, try to build up their reputation and their name and all of that. Fine. I mean, that, use the process. But you can only do it until you pass out. What they're doing now, you get to just turn in a blue slip on a nominee that you don't want to support. You get to just let them know by some little note that I would talk forever if you bring this bill up. So don't do it, or I'm gonna cause delays. Okay, we'll do it. Make them do an actual filibuster. That's one person doing that. And even if they tag team with multiple members back to back to back, they're only going to be able to delay for so long. This business of actually requiring 60 votes, of actually requiring a supermajority in order to get anything done, that's not American. That's not majority rule. You go back to our oldest constitutions in our states and the Constitution itself. It shouldn't be done that way. It's got to change. And I think, I can't remember who said it the other day. One of our congressmen said, it's already going to be done. That if the Democrats get the majority, they're going to get rid of it on day one. So Republicans should do the smart, right thing here. Get rid of the filibuster and start doing majority rules and get the job of the American people done. We voted for a specific agenda. Go do it. Thanks for listening. You've been listening to At the Core with Walker Wildmon and Rick Green.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast may not